7 signs he'll never love you the way you deserve. Have you ever loved someone so deeply, yet felt so unseen, so unheard, so unloved in return? You kept giving, kept hoping, kept believing that if you just held on a little longer, he would finally see your worth. But deep inside, something didn't feel right. Today, I'm going to walk you through 7 powerful signs that he may never love you the way you truly deserve. This isn't just a list, it's a wake-up call, a mirror to reflect the truth you've been afraid to face. Because your heart isn't meant to survive on broken promises or one-sided effort. It's meant to thrive in a love that lifts you, values you, and chooses you every single day. So stay with me until the very end of this video, because sometimes the words you hear today can give you the strength to walk away tomorrow. Let's talk about the truth your soul already knows and the love that's still waiting for you when you finally choose yourself. Love is shown, not promised. That one truth has saved more hearts than all the apologies and promises combined. Because real love doesn't live in the fantasy of what someone says they'll do one day. It lives in what they do right now. You can't build a relationship on potential. You can't hold on to words that never turn into action. When someone says they care, that's a nice start. But if they're not showing it through their time, effort, consistency, and sacrifice, it's just noise, empty noise. And too many people are stuck in relationships where they're emotionally starving, waiting for that one promised change that never comes. He says he loves you, but doesn't prioritize you. He says you mean the world to him, but his actions scream indifference. He tells you he'll change, but the same patterns repeat. That's not love, that's manipulation with a velvet glove. It feels soft, but it's still keeping you locked in place. And over time, that gap between what he says and what he does begins to break you. You question your worth. You wonder if you're asking for too much, but you're not asking for too much. You're just asking the wrong person. Love is active. It shows up when it's hard. It listens. It compromises. It grows with you. If he can talk about a future with you, but can't make time for you today, he's building castles in the sky. Words don't build trust. Behaviors do. And love without effort is just a story people tell you to keep you around. The sad part is, so many women cling to those words because they want to believe them. They remember the few sweet moments, the beginning, the spark, and they hold on tight. But the beginning of a relationship is easy. What matters is what happens when the initial excitement fades. Does he still show up when life gets hard? Does he support your goals, or only expect you to support his? Does he communicate or disappear when things get difficult? That's when you know what love really looks like. When a man truly loves you, you don't have to constantly interpret his words. You won't be stuck guessing what he means or if he's still interested. You'll know because he'll show you. Through consistency, through respect, through the way he protects your heart instead of leaving it exposed. Promises are cheap when they aren't followed by proof. Anyone can say, I'm going to change, or you're everything to me, but it's not the words that make you feel secure. It's the effort. It's the little things, the check-ins when you're down, the space he gives you to be yourself, the way he remembers your worries and shows up to calm them. That is what real love looks like in action. You can't afford to ignore the difference anymore. Love isn't something you should have to earn every day. It's something you receive from the right person who sees your value and honors it without you begging. You don't need a poet, you need a partner. Someone who says what he means and backs it up every single time. Someone whose love is so clear, you don't feel anxious wondering if it's still there. Because love that's real never needs decoding. It's not a mystery. It's not hidden in excuses. It's not locked behind someday. It's felt, it's visible, it's here right now. Or it's not love at all. Unavailability is a loud answer. It doesn't whisper, it doesn't speak in code. It shouts exactly how someone feels about you, whether you're ready to hear it or not. When a man is emotionally or physically unavailable, that's not a sign of bad timing or a reason to try harder. It's the truth, revealing itself in the most undeniable way. When someone wants you, they show up. Maybe not perfectly, but consistently. They don't leave you hanging, wondering, questioning if you're asking for too much just because you want clarity, presence, or commitment. Emotional unavailability isn't a phase, it's a pattern, and patterns don't lie. So many people fall into the trap of thinking, if I just love him more, he'll open up. But love doesn't unlock a heart that's closed by choice. You can't fight to be chosen. You can't force someone to become emotionally available if they're not willing to be. And it's not your job to do the emotional labor of waiting for a breakthrough that may never come. If you're always the one initiating, checking in, reaching out, and holding the weight of the connection, it's not mutual. That's not a relationship. That's a performance you're putting on, hoping the audience eventually claps. But silence is a response. Distance is a decision. When someone keeps you at arm's length, it's not because they're confused. It's because they've chosen not to invite you in. And the danger is you'll internalize that behavior. You'll start to believe you're not enough, that you have to prove your worth or be more patient, more understanding, more forgiving. But real love doesn't make you feel like you're on trial. It doesn't ask you to earn basic presence and attention. If a man is emotionally absent, if he disappears during hard moments, if he avoids conversations that matter, he's telling you exactly where you stand. And the more you make excuses for that behavior, the more you abandon yourself in the process. You deserve more than crumbs of connection. You deserve a seat at the table, not a place in the waiting room. It's easy to confuse unavailability with mystery, but silence isn't depth. Being distant doesn't mean he's complex. It just means he's not willing to offer you what you need. And love that makes you feel invisible, uncertain, or like a temporary option isn't love at all. It's a placeholder for the real thing. You are not hard to love. You are not asking for too much. You're asking the wrong person to give you something they don't have the courage or desire to give. Emotional availability means being seen, heard, and held, not pushed away when it matters most. When someone is unavailable, it doesn't mean they're a bad person, but it does mean they're the wrong person for you right now. And no amount of patience or hope will change someone who isn't ready or willing. You can't wait your life away hoping someone wakes up one day and decides you're finally worth showing up for. Because love doesn't show up eventually, it shows up now. In the moments that count, in the conversations that are hard, in the everyday choices that say, you matter to me. If you're not getting that, then what are you really holding on to? Don't settle for absence and call it space. Don't confuse detachment with independence. If he's never emotionally there when you need him, he's already told you how the story ends. You're always compromising. He rarely does. That imbalance may seem small at first, almost invisible, something you convince yourself is normal because love requires effort and sacrifice. But when the weight of the relationship constantly falls on your shoulders, when you're the one adjusting your expectations, lowering your standards, making room for his life while he barely acknowledges yours, that's not love. That's self-abandonment. A healthy relationship is built on mutual effort. It's not about who gives more or who wins. It's about both people showing up equally, even if differently. But when you find yourself being the one who always says sorry first, who always rearranges plans, who always softens your truth just to keep the peace, what you're really doing is negotiating with your worth. Compromise is necessary in love, but it's not supposed to be a one-way street. If he gets to live his life freely while you bend over backwards to keep the connection alive, you're not in a partnership. You're in a silent sacrifice. And the more you give, the more he expects. What once felt like small accommodations slowly become the norm until you can't recognize your own needs anymore. You stop speaking up because you fear it'll push him away. You stop asking for more because you already know the answer. But that silence, that shrinking, that steady erosion of your self-respect, it costs you more than the relationship ever gave you. If you're constantly adjusting to avoid conflict, making excuses for his lack of effort, or pretending you're okay when you're not, that's not compromise. That's conditioning. That's teaching yourself to accept less so you don't lose him. But if keeping someone in your life requires losing parts of yourself, then what exactly are you holding on to? True love doesn't ask you to erase yourself. It doesn't punish you for having needs or desires. It invites both people to meet in the middle, not one person to keep moving further just to maintain peace. And here's what's even more damaging. When you continue to give and give, hoping he'll notice, hoping he'll reciprocate, but you don't need to prove your love through sacrifice. If he needs you to carry both your emotional load and his, that's not partnership. That's imbalance disguised as commitment. And every time you forgive the same behavior without real change, every time you agree to something that doesn't sit right with your soul, every time you convince yourself it's not a big deal, you chip away at your own boundaries. Eventually, you find yourself exhausted, resentful, emotionally worn out. Not because you're weak, but because you've been strong for too long in a place that doesn't honor your strength. You were never meant to carry a relationship alone. Love thrives when two people show up fully, not when one person gives while the other takes. So if you find yourself constantly adjusting your life to fit his comfort while he doesn't even stretch to meet you halfway, then the message is clear. He values your effort, not your essence. And if someone only loves the parts of you that make their life easier, then they don't truly love you. Stop normalizing one-sided sacrifice. Stop mistaking your loyalty for love. You deserve someone who meets you in the middle, who listens, who changes, who gives back, because real love isn't about losing yourself to keep someone. It's about becoming more of yourself with the right one. Your value feels questioned, not celebrated. That feeling, subtle at first, grows like a shadow over everything you do. It shows up when you hesitate before speaking your mind, afraid he'll roll his eyes or dismiss your thoughts. It shows up when you second-guess your worth because you never quite feel good enough around him. In a relationship that's right, you feel safe being all of who you are. But in one where your value is constantly in question, you begin to shrink, to edit yourself, to doubt your own brilliance. And no matter how hard you try to prove yourself, it never seems to be enough for him to treat you like someone who truly matters. There is a unique pain in loving someone who doesn't celebrate you. It's not loud or obvious. It doesn't always come with insults or arguments. Sometimes it's quiet, a slow fade of recognition. He stops noticing your effort. He overlooks your needs. He minimizes your achievements. And in doing so, he turns your confidence into confusion. You start to believe that maybe you're asking for too much when all you really want is to be seen, valued, appreciated. You question whether you're too emotional, too demanding, too complicated. But those aren't flaws. They're signs you have a heart that wants to be felt and a soul that deserves to be honored. The man who truly sees you will never make you feel like you're too much. He won't compete with your light. He'll be drawn to it. He won't make you feel like a burden. He'll make space for your voice. But when he constantly highlights your flaws and rarely your strengths, when he compares you to others, when he withholds compliments but easily gives criticism, he's not trying to help you grow. He's keeping you unsure so you don't realize your own power. That kind of dynamic isn't love. It's control wrapped in indifference. And the longer you stay in it, the more you lose sight of who you really are. You don't need someone who only loves the idea of you when you're quiet, agreeable, or always available. You need someone who honors you in your fullness, who claps for you when you win, who holds you when you're vulnerable, who never lets you forget how rare your heart is. And that kind of connection doesn't make you question your worth, it reinforces it. It builds you up. It reflects your beauty back to you in ways that make you feel seen, not small. When someone constantly makes you feel like you're replaceable, like they're doing you a favor by being with you, that's not a relationship. That's emotional starvation dressed as companionship. Your worth doesn't depend on how much he sees in you. It exists whether he sees it or not. But the man you choose to build with should be someone who never lets you forget it. You deserve to be chosen out loud. You deserve to be loved in a way that feels like freedom, not performance. And if you have to keep reminding someone of your value, they've already decided they don't see it. Love doesn't thrive in places where you feel like you have to constantly audition for it. It grows in the places where you're welcomed, respected, and deeply valued, not just for what you do, but for who you are. Hope keeps you there, not reality. And that's the most heartbreaking part, because you're not in love with the person in front of you, you're in love with what he could be. You're holding on to potential, onto memories from when things felt right, onto glimpses of love that were never consistent enough to be real. You keep replaying the good moments like a highlight reel, convincing yourself they mean something deeper. But deep down, you know the day-to-day reality doesn't match the dream you're clinging to. You're stuck in a cycle of waiting for him to change, to grow up, to realize your worth. And while you wait, life is passing by. And so is your peace. There's a quiet kind of suffering that comes with loving someone who never fully shows up. You carry the relationship with your hope, patching the holes with forgiveness, pretending his silences are just temporary. You give him credit for trying, when in truth he's just doing the bare minimum to keep you from walking away. And when he senses you're slipping, he does just enough to pull you back. A sweet message, a small gesture, a hollow apology. Suddenly your hope flares up again and you think maybe this time is different. Maybe he means it. Maybe this is the beginning of the change you've been waiting for. But it's not. It's just the cycle starting over. Hope is beautiful, but misplaced hope becomes a trap. It keeps you rooted in a relationship that isn't growing, in a story that's already told you how it ends. You ignore the red flags because you're so focused on the picture in your head. You don't want to start over. You don't want to admit that you love someone who never truly loved you back. So you stay. You invest more time. You make more excuses. You silence your own needs and tell yourself that love is about patience. But real love doesn't require you to betray yourself to keep it alive. You think you're being loyal, but what you're really doing is holding on to a version of him that doesn't exist. You see flashes of it in his smile, in the way he touches you when he's present, in the rare moments of connection. But if love only shows up when it's convenient, it's not love, it's control. And the longer you stay for potential, the more you rob yourself of the love that's actually possible for you. The kind that's steady, mutual, open-hearted, the kind that doesn't need fixing, only nurturing. Hope should be a bridge to something better, not an anchor to something broken. When you find yourself more in love with the future than the present, when you keep saying, if he just, or maybe one day, that's not a relationship, that's a fantasy. A relationship should feel like a place where you can breathe, not where you're constantly holding your breath waiting. You deserve more than someone who gives you just enough to keep you hopeful, but never enough to feel safe. You deserve the kind of love that meets you where you are, not the kind that asks you to wait indefinitely. There's a difference between having faith in someone and putting your life on hold for them. The first is empowering, the second is draining. If you find yourself constantly justifying his lack of effort with future possibilities, it's time to ask yourself if you're in love with him or just afraid to start over. Because staying out of hope that he'll change may be the very thing keeping you from finding someone who won't need to. You feel more anxious than secure, and that anxiety isn't coming from nowhere. It's your intuition trying to scream over the silence in your relationship. When you're constantly wondering where you stand with someone, replaying conversations, second-guessing what you said, or bracing yourself for the next emotional high or low, that's not love. It's survival mode. Love is not supposed to keep you up at night, questioning your worth or your place in someone's heart. It's not supposed to feel like walking on eggshells or waiting for the next shift in mood. But when you're with someone who's inconsistent, emotionally unavailable, or unwilling to meet you halfway, the relationship becomes a trigger, not a sanctuary. Anxiety in relationships doesn't just appear, it's fed by behaviors. When he pulls away and then comes close just enough to keep you around, your nervous system can't settle. You get addicted to the tension, to the unpredictability, to the rare moments of affection that feel like water in a desert. You start living for the highs because the lows are too painful to sit with. You convince yourself that this must be what love is: difficult, intense, chaotic. But that's not love. That's emotional instability being mistaken for passion. Real love feels calm, it feels grounded, it gives you room to breathe, to be, to rest, not just physically, but emotionally. When someone loves you right, you don't have to constantly earn their attention or prove your worth. You don't feel like you're on a countdown to being replaced. You don't shrink yourself to avoid conflict or walk on emotional landmines hoping today won't be the day they decide they've had enough. If being yourself feels like a risk, then you're not in a space of love, you're in a space of fear. And no matter how good the chemistry might be, Fear-based love never creates lasting peace. It only deepens your anxiety and confuses your heart into thinking this chaos is normal. When you're in a healthy relationship, you're not worried that one disagreement will make him leave. You're not analyzing his every word for hidden meanings or panicking when he doesn't text back fast enough. You're not spending hours wondering if you're good enough. That mental and emotional exhaustion is a sign that you're carrying the weight of the relationship alone. You become hypervigilant, overly responsible, and deeply unsure of your value. And the longer it continues, the more you internalize his inconsistency as your fault. You may think this anxious energy means you care, that being so affected by him is proof of your love. But caring for someone should never mean losing your peace. You can love deeply and still feel stable. You can be passionate without being panicked. You can be emotionally invested without feeling like your world will collapse every time he pulls away. If you're constantly unsettled, it's time to stop asking what more you can do and start asking what this relationship is doing to you. You deserve to feel chosen, not tolerated. You deserve the kind of love where you're not constantly questioning if you're too much or not enough. The kind where your soul can exhale. Love should be the safest place you know, not the most confusing. When your body is always in fight or flight because of someone's inconsistency or neglect, that's not love. It's emotional trauma in disguise. Trust the anxiety. Trust the tightness in your chest and the heaviness in your heart. They're not flaws, they're signals. And they're asking you to choose yourself before you lose yourself. Deep down, you already know. You feel it in your chest. When you're alone, when your phone stays silent too long, when the smile on your face fades the moment he leaves the room, that quiet, unsettling feeling that something's not right, that you're holding on tighter than he ever has, that you're hoping for something you already know isn't coming. You felt it in the way your heart sinks after yet another conversation where your needs were brushed off, in the way your joy has slowly been replaced with confusion, in the way you always defend him to your friends, even when their silence tells you they see what you don't want to admit. The truth is, your intuition has been speaking to you all along, not through anger, but through exhaustion. It's not that you don't know what's happening, it's that you're afraid of what admitting it might mean. You fear the ending, the letting go, the idea of starting over. You fear the pain of walking away more than the pain of staying. So you silence your instincts, cover them with rationalizations. Try to convince yourself that maybe he just needs time or space or healing. Maybe you need to be more patient, more understanding, more forgiving. But every time you make excuses, you're not protecting the relationship, you're betraying your own clarity. That inner knowing, the one you've tried to drown out with distractions or empty hope, isn't trying to hurt you, it's trying to save you. It's the part of you that remembers your worth, the part that knows love shouldn't feel like a guessing game, the part that craves peace over potential. But when you ignore that voice, the cost is your emotional freedom. You become stuck in a loop where every apology feels like a lifeline and every disappointment feels like your fault. You hold on to the version of him you wish he could be instead of seeing the version of him that consistently shows up. That voice inside you isn't cold or cruel. It's deeply loving. It's the truth you've been afraid to face, wrapped in compassion. It knows you've tried. It sees how much you've given. It honors your effort and your heart. But it's also asking you to stop choosing someone who only chooses you when it's convenient. Love doesn't look like anxiety wrapped in false hope. It doesn't feel like a never-ending wait for someone to realize what they have. Real love shows up. Real love makes you feel safe. Real love doesn't silence your spirit, it amplifies it. The most heartbreaking part is knowing what you deserve while staying with someone who doesn't offer it. But clarity is a gift, even when it hurts, because once you stop denying what your gut already knows, you take your power back. You no longer wait for someone to change. You no longer beg for basic affection. You stop romanticizing pain and start reaching for peace. And peace doesn't always come from being with someone. Sometimes it comes from finally walking away. You already know he's not loving you the way you deserve. You don't need another sign or another apology to prove it. The knowing is already there. You've just been trying to outrun it. But freedom begins the moment you stop running. And healing begins the moment you trust yourself enough to say, I know this isn't love. I know I deserve better. I know it's time to let go, because the truth doesn't set you free until you allow yourself to believe it. And once you do, you won't need another answer. You'll become it.